Hello, today's lesson is going to be on plotting a straight line graph, and we're going to look at two different techniques, both of which should be revision. But we're going to start off by drawing some straight lines for which the equations are just x equals a number and y equals a number, and also the lines y equals x and y equals negative x. Now, as this should be revision, what I'd like you to do is pause the video, sketch down the axes as you see them on the screen, and then see if you can remember how to draw the lines which are given to you on the screen. Okay, so the first line, x equals 1, which you can see here, this is telling us that every point on our line will have an x coordinate of 1. So if you can't remember what this line should look like, what you can do is pick a few points where the x coordinate is 1. This is x is 1, so I could plot a point here, and here, and here, and this one would be 1, 4, 1, 5, and so on. And what you'll find is that all of those points create a vertical line that goes through x equals 1. And so should look like this. Now, it could be that if you tried this yourself, you drew a horizontal line, because this is the x-axis, and it's very common for people to make the mistake of thinking that x equals 1 should be parallel to the x-axis, but actually it's counterintuitive. So it goes through 1 on the x-axis and it's perpendicular to the x-axis. So the next one, y equals 7, this tells us that all the points on our line have a y coordinate of 7. So if we plot a few points like that, we could have 0, 7, which would be here, 1, 7, which would be here, 2, 7, which would be here, and we'll find that all of the points join together to make a horizontal line, which looks like this. Again, it's not parallel to the y-axis, so just check your own working to make sure that you have got that horizontal rather than vertical. So moving on, the line y equals x, this is the line where all of the y coordinates are equal to the x coordinates. So for example, 0, y is 0, x is 0, y is 1, x is 1, y is 2, x is 2. So I'm going to plot at 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 2, and because of my scale being different on the x and y axis here, it's not going to diagonally go through the squares, so you have to be careful of the scale. It's going to look like this. So this is because this point here is 1, 1, and this point here is 2, 2. Then we've got the line y equals negative x, so this means that if x is 1, y will be negative 1. So if x is 1, y is negative 1, that's going to be down here. If x is 2, y is negative 2, that's going to be down here. So what we're going to get then is a diagonal line again, but it's going to be sloping in the opposite direction, and it's going to look like this. And then just to finish off, y equals negative 3. I haven't got a negative 3 on my axis here, but it's going to be, sorry, yes I do, it's down here. It's going to be horizontal going through that point. And then x equals negative 2 is going to be vertical and going through minus 2 on the x-axis like this. Okay, moving on then, where we are given a table of values to complete and an equation given in the form y equals something. So y is the subject of our equation. What we need to do is substitute some x values in to work out what the corresponding y coordinate will be. So in this case, if I start with x is 0, y is 3 times x, 3 times 0, add 2. And I'm going to use BIDMAS to calculate this. So 3 multiplied by 0 is 0, add 2 is 2. So that goes into my table. Then when x is 1, I'm going to have y equals 3 times 1, add 2. 3 times 1 is 3, and then when I add 2 to that, it will give me 5. So that goes into my table. Next one, y equals 3 times 2, add 2. So 3 times 2 is 6, add 2 is going to be 8. So what you should notice here is that every time we go along our table, we are actually adding 3. So that should be no surprise to us because of our work on sequences. We know that if we are dealing with a sequence that goes up in 3, then our sequence has the form 3n add or subtract something. So the fact that this is 3x add something, we already should know that our terms here are going to go up by 3 each time. And I can use that to help me fill in the negative values, but also I can work them out as I did previously. So 3 times negative 1 add 2, that will be negative 3 add 2, which is negative 1. Or I can think of it as, well, to go back a step, I'm going to need to subtract 3. So that will be negative 1. And then y equals 3 times negative 2 add 2. Well, that will be negative 6 add 2, which will give me negative 4. Or I can see it as, if I go back a step, I'm going to need to subtract 4. Okay, so what I've got in my table here now is a pair of coordinates, and I'm going to have to plot them. So I've got 0, 2, 1, 5, 2, 8, and then I've also got negative 1, and negative 2, negative 4. So I'm going to start with this one, negative 2, negative 4, negative 2 on the x-axis, negative 4 on the y-axis, and plot my point. And then negative 1, 0, 2, 1, 5, 2, 8. And then what's really important is that you remember to join those up to make a straight line, because there are actually lots of points that lie on this line that aren't necessarily integers, and those are all going to be lying in between the points that I plotted. The other thing just to think about is that in an exam question, they don't necessarily give you the table. They might just say plot the line y equals 3x add 2, in which case you can draw out your table, pick some points for x, and work out the corresponding y coordinates. So just because they don't give you the table doesn't mean to say that you can't draw one out for yourself. So again, that is the only example I'm going to give you because this should be revision. And here is the worksheet. Now, I will attach this to the assignment so that you can print it off if you do have access to a printer, but there is absolutely no need for you to print it off because you can copy these axes down into your books or onto some paper and then plot your graphs that way. So question 1 and question 4 give you the table. Question 2 and question 3 don't, but you can draw the table down for yourself. So if you're not going to print off the sheet, you can just pause the video at this point and do this into your books. If you're going to print it off, but also pause the video because we are not going to stop here today. We're going to look at another technique. So pause the video and give these questions a go. Okay, so moving on, we are going to look at plotting graphs where we don't have our equations given to us in the form y equals something. So rather than rearrange these types of equations, it's much easier to use something called the cover-up method. So if I look at the first equation that I'm being asked to plot here, 3x add 2y is equal to 12, and what I'm going to do is cover up the 3x part, and what that will do is be equivalent to working out what value y will take if x is 0. So cover up 3x, that means that is taking the value 0, so 2y must equal 12. And now I can divide by 2 and say, well, in that case, y equals 6. And that's the coordinate when x equals 0, so that's the coordinate 0, 6. I can then, and I can plot that, as you can see on the screen there, I can then cover up the 2y part, which will tell me what x is when y is 0. So 3x must equal 12, and I can divide through by 3 and work out that x is 4 when y is 0. So that will be the coordinate 4, 0. And I can plot that. And just with those 2 points, I can join up with a straight line, and that gives me the whole of the rest of my straight line. Okay, so that's one of the equations we've been asked to plot, to draw. The other one is 3x add 5y equals 15. So again, what we're going to do here is work out what y is when x is 0. So we're going to cover up 3x. Can you pause the video and work out what y will be? Okay, so we need to divide 3 by 5, which tells us that x is 3. So my coordinate is 0, 3, and I can plot that. And then I can also cover up the 5y part to work out what x is when y is 0. So can you pause the video and work out x? Okay, so I'm going to divide through by 3, and that tells me that x is 5. So my coordinate is x is 5, y is 0, and I can plot that and then join up those 2 points. Now, because I've done both of these on the same graph, they cross, and this is called a point of intersection, which you might be asked to read off. And this one, we would have to estimate it because it's not going through a nice grid line. So it looks like it might be about 3.3 perhaps, and 1. And so the point of intersection would be 3.31. Okay, could you pause the video and see if you can use the cover-up method to find the 2 points where this equation crosses the axes, and then use that to draw your graph. Okay, so first of all, when x is 0, cover up the 5x. That should have said 5x there, not 3x. And that tells us here that y is equal to 10. So my coordinate is 0, 10. Then when y is 0, cover up the y. That tells me that 5x equals 10. Divide through by 5, x equals 2. So that is the point 2, 0. Plot that, join them up, and there is my straight line. Okay, could you pause the video again and have a go at drawing this graph using the cover-up method? Okay, so cover up x, and that tells me that y is equal to 2, so my point is 0, 2. Then cover up the y part, and that tells me that negative 2x is equal to 2. And therefore I'm going to divide by negative 2, which tells me that x equals negative 1. So my point is negative 1, 0. So now I'm going to plot both of those, 0, 2 and negative 1, 0, and join those up. And then I get a point of intersection right here, which looks like it's about 1.2 and perhaps 4.2. Okay, so this exercise you did for me back in the last lockdown, but there's no harm in you doing it again. So what you're being asked to do here is draw out a set of axes and use the cover-up method this time to draw the 2 pairs of graphs. And then you can read off the point of intersection and write that down. And when you're given the answers, you'll be given the points of intersection. So that is how you will know whether you got these correct. So pause the video and answer these questions in your book or on some paper.